Jasmine, and welcome to Pushing Over the Box. I'm a 13-year-old ballerina who's curious about what it really takes to dance at the highest level. Here, I ask inspiring dancers about their routines, their mindsets, and how they break boundaries. Let's go! Welcome back to Pushing Over the Box. I'm so excited because today I'm joined by Ingrid Thoms. She's a dancer at American Ballet Theater and a student at Fordham University, and just recently made her debut as Lilac Fairy. I hope you all enjoy. So, thank you so much for being here. When did you start dancing, and what did your early dance training look like?
So I probably started dancing when I was about 3 or 4. I remember that I was watching the Barbie Nutcracker movie at home. Have you seen that?
No, but it sounds very cool.
Yeah, and I was watching that at home, and my mom was like, "Oh, is this something you'd want to do?" And so I said yes, and she put me into a ballet class that was kind of at our local rec center. And then eventually, after being there maybe a year or two, they said that, "Oh, it seems like I have some natural ability, and maybe I should think about going to a more professional school." So then my parents moved me to a more serious studio when I was probably about 7 or 8, and that's when I started to get my real professional training.
Did you like it from day one, or when did you first fall in love with it?
I think I did like it to a certain degree. I remember I really enjoyed ballet class. I know when I was younger it was a bit more like free form, and I really enjoyed like the creativity and the freedom of dancing. And even when I got a bit older and went to that more professional studio, I really started to like the structure and kind of the intensity of the more professional classes. But I do remember that I was extremely nervous about performing. Even like as a very little girl, we would do little performances in the studio, and I would just like go running to my mom crying because I was so scared. So I definitely, when I was younger, I know that I enjoyed just being in class more than I did the performances.
And did you stay in in-person school through your whole training, or what did that look like for you?
So I did in-person public school from kindergarten through 8th grade, and that was when I was at my younger ballet school, and then when I was at that more professional training until 8th grade. And then I decided to go to the Herod Conservatory, which is a boarding school for ballet, and that's in Florida, and they offered online school. So I lived there in Florida on their campus, and they kind of had built-in academics with the dance program, and that was online. But we would all sit in a classroom together and work on our online school together. So it was still pretty structured. And then after leaving Herod, I was at the ABT JKO school for 1 year, and I finished my academics completely independently. So it was still online, but a different program, and I just did that as independent work.
Did you like school, or did you just do it because you had to?
I really liked school, actually, especially through 8th grade when I was in public school. I really enjoyed it. It was definitely difficult to balance with my training, especially towards those last years that I was in middle school and in person still. But I always enjoyed it, and I'm still, as you said, a student at Fordham University, and I really still enjoy academics to this day.
How did you balance it, and do you balance it?
Well, when I was younger, like in later elementary and middle school, it was definitely difficult because I would be in school all day and then until 3 o'clock, and then I'd go to ballet probably from 4 to 7, and I just remember staying up so late trying to do my homework, or I'd be doing it on the bus. So it definitely became really challenging. I think my family really valued education, and kind of in the same way that I felt like I had a lot of discipline in ballet, I feel that same way about school, and I really enjoy doing the work, like the schoolwork, and I feel good when I work hard at school too. So that was always a priority of mine, was balancing that. But it was definitely challenging later in those like later elementary, middle school years. And I think it actually did get a bit easier kind of as I went into high school, because at Herod, it was kind of built into our day. You were still working independently on your online school, so you kind of had to like monitor the time that you spent doing it yourself. But I never really found too much of a challenge with it, and I think because they built kind of that school schedule into our day, it was, relatively easy to do. And now that I'm in university at Fordham, I think I've kind of carried that discipline with me. And I really enjoy, like, I wake up a little bit earlier maybe than most do. And because I know I really enjoy to do my schoolwork in the morning. So that's something that kind of works for me. I know, like, I put in an hour or two in the morning when I can to do my schoolwork, and then on the weekend. So I kind of build it into my routine that way.
And when you were at training, were you only doing ballet, or were you also doing other forms of dance?
I was really only doing ballet, especially when I was younger, still living at home. My studio there was just really focused on ballet. We would do like character as well, but it was really only that. When I went to Harrod and then at JKO, I started to have other dance styles as well. Like we would do modern and different sorts of things.
When you were younger, did you have any inspiration or someone that you looked up to?
Ooh, yeah, I would say that I had quite a few dancers who I looked up to. I was always really interested in going to ABT. It was my dream company from a very young age, and really the only company that I had my eye on. And so I would say Jillian Murphy, she really inspired me as a ballerina that I looked up to. But I also remember growing up, looking up to the older students in my studio a lot. And that was actually how I was inspired to go to Harrod, because we had a student who had gone to Harrod and then she had gone on to be, a professional dancer. And so I really saw that as a way to become a professional dancer myself.
When did you decide that it was a professional route that you could pursue, and were your parents always supportive of that?
I think probably by the time I was 9 or 10, I really knew that I wanted to do it professionally. And I was very encouraged by those teachers that I had growing up, because they really believed in me and really wanted to work with me to help me become a professional. And I would say that my parents were very supportive. I think that they were pretty shocked when I brought the idea of me moving away to go to boarding school. I was only 13, and I remember I made a big booklet with different pictures and stories about Harrod to try to convince them. Even though I really don't think it took much convincing, I actually think back to it a lot and I'm like, wow, obviously so grateful that my parents were so supportive in that way, and also pretty impressed, because I grew up in Virginia. It was a pretty far, way away to Florida when you're 13 to be going and living away from your parents. So yeah, I would say that they've been incredibly supportive.
Did you do anything outside of the studio that you think really helped you?
When I was younger, I was so focused on just ballet all the time. And that was really the only activity I did. And I actually wish that I had done, whether it be more other forms of dance or maybe doing a musical instrument. I wish I had more balance. I think growing up, I think that would have helped me, now that I'm a professional. But I will say now I've really gotten into painting, watercolor painting, and I've been taking painting classes, and I love it. And I find it so relaxing and just a perfect balance of something that's still creative expression that I love, but it's just very relaxing and a great break from the studio, and really helps to balance and supports my mental health.
When you transitioned to JKO, was that through a summer intensive, or how did you get into the school?
So I auditioned just for the school year-round program. I didn't actually go to the summer intensive first. I first auditioned when I was 15, I believe, and I actually didn't get in. So I was pretty devastated by that. I remember being very upset, but after a day or two, I kind of got over it, and I was like, well, I'm just going to keep working hard and try again. And I knew I knew I wanted to go to ABT, and so the next year I auditioned again to go to the JKO school, and I did end up getting in that year later.
What was your transition into the studio company like?
So I spent 1 year at the JKO school, and then I got into studio company. I think my transition felt pretty natural. I was lucky because I had some really close friends who were in JKO with me that I had gotten to know throughout that year and became very close with. We were all accepted into studio company together. So it kind of just felt like a natural progression. We were definitely dancing a lot more. At JKO, at that time, we would just have, I believe we just had afternoon classes. But then when we joined studio company, it was full day, class in the morning, rehearsing all day, touring and doing performances. So kind of more similar to a professional schedule. But I remember feeling very supported, and I felt like it was a pretty natural transition.
What was it like Your first season in the first company, was that very stressful for you?
Yeah, it definitely was. I think the transition from being in studio company to being an apprentice and working with the company, that was more of a jarring transition for me. I remember even starting with company class, I would be so nervous to take class and like be around all these dancers. I wanted to, always be respectful and doing the right thing, and at the same time you want to be noticed because you want to get a job or your full-time corps de ballet position, and you're just getting used to so many things, like how the company runs, kind of like the dynamics between the dancers and the rehearsal director. So it was, a lot to learn. I felt pretty lucky because at ABT we have a mentorship program. So I was given a mentor when I joined, and I remember asking her a lot of questions. And all the dancers were so friendly to us, to the new apprentices, so that did help, but there definitely was a transitional period.
What does a typical day at ABT look like for you?
So when we're just rehearsing, when we're at 890, which is our rehearsal studios, we take company class in the morning. That goes from about 10 to 11:15, and then we have rehearsals. We usually go from our full day is 11:30 to 6:30, and we have like an hour break for lunch typically. And usually we're in a different rehearsal every hour of that day. And we're just kind of working on what's, coming up next, or maybe what's going to be over the next few months. So it's fun because you're challenged to do a lot of different rep every day. And I find that very inspiring and invigorating. Yeah, that's our typical day rehearsing. For performing, it kind of depends. When we're performing in New York, we do company class in the morning, we have rehearsals, we might have a tech rehearsal for the show that night or the next day, and then we'll perform at night. So our rehearsals then would go from about noon to 4 or 5, and then we would have a little break and then get ready for the show. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite role you've danced so far?
I think my favorite role that I've done is Myrta in Giselle. She is the queen of the willies. It's a really difficult role, stamina-wise. It's a lot of jumping. You come out and you start with a super slow adagio. You're the only person on stage. And then that builds to all of the jumping. And also just the character of the role. She's like a very strong woman. She's the queen of these willies, and I found that character so fun to develop, and I really tried with every step I did to come up with her reason for that step, and I let that kind of guide me as I did the show. So I remember like a coach of mine, she was talking about, how fierce Myrta was, and I would just think to myself as I was getting ready to do like my last entrance, which is all this jumping. By that point you're so fatigued. I would just keep telling myself in my head like that I was like fierce. Like I would just say that to myself, and that like fueled me to do the difficult steps. Yeah, so that was such an amazing experience. Definitely my favorite role that I've worked on and performed.
Do you have a favorite ballet?
I think I do love Swan Lake. I think that's one of my favorites. Every time I find the music so beautiful. I love watching it. I love watching everyone in our company do that ballet. And I love Romeo and Juliet. Juliet is like such a dream role of mine. Again, I love the music and I love the story. Yeah. Those are probably my two favorites.
Do you have a favorite costume?
Ooh, that's a good question. I've worn so many. I'm trying to think. We had these really beautiful blue tutus that we wore for Ballet Imperial, which is a Balanchine ballet. Those were probably one of my favorites, I would say, yeah. The Lilac Fairy costume that I just wore is super gorgeous. It's like this like bright purple. It kind of had like iridescent sparkles on it, which I loved. Yeah, so that was a pretty special one too.
How do you keep yourself motivated when you're tired or sore or just things aren't going perfectly?
Yeah, it's really difficult to stay motivated all the time, and I don't think that it's something that you should expect that you're always going to feel motivated, which is why I think it's just so important to show up every day and just do your best to work hard. And that may look different every day. Obviously some days you're going to be tired and sore. You feel like you're not working as hard, but just by like showing up and doing what you have to do, I think that helps you just building that helps you when the motivation isn't there every day, because you've built this routine that when you go into the studio, you turn on and you are working hard. Yeah, and I've definitely feel like I've relied on that a lot, because there are moments when you're really tired from performing, or you don't want to do it that day for whatever reason. But when you've kind of built that routine of working hard in the studio every day, you show up and you just do it.
Do you consider yourself a perfectionist?
I think I definitely was when I was younger. I think as I've gotten a bit older, I've become a little bit less of a perfectionist. I think I try to be a little bit more understanding of where I'm at every day, and not, beat myself up for something that I feel like isn't perfect, because it's just like completely unattainable to be perfect. I think I just try to do what I can to improve a little bit every day. I think being in the company and seeing so many dancers dance, and to me, when I'm watching dance, I don't really notice a lot of little imperfections. Like when it's just like the artistry is there and I'm immersed in a performance because the dancer is so present in what they're doing, or at least that's how it's coming across to me. You don't really notice these imperfections that maybe when you're dancing you feel. So I also just try to remember that no performance, no combination, anything is going to be perfect. So I think putting that pressure on yourself is limiting. And I think seeing other dancers not be perfect but have an amazing performance that makes me feel so much emotionally, that also reminds me that I don't need to be perfect to be a good dancer.
How do you deal with pre-show nerves?
Well, I do a lot of affirmations, positive affirmations, because I am someone who does tend to get nervous. I would say I get nervous to do pretty much every role, even if it's relatively simple. I feel like I do feel nerves just being on stage. But what I try to tell myself is it's totally fine to be nervous. And now that I've been performing for so many years, I know that I'm capable of performing well and feeling good about a show, even when I've been really nervous to do it. So I just try to remind myself of that it's totally okay that I'm nervous, and that I can still go on stage and do what I want to do, be successful, despite feeling those nerves.
Have you ever experienced an injury, and how did you recover from that?
I've been very lucky. In my professional career, I haven't really had an injury that's taken me out of shows. But when I was younger, I had quite a few injuries growing up. I had 2 knee dislocations. That was when I was a teenager, I think because I was growing. And I know I sprained my ankle. I broke my foot when I was a teenager. So I had quite a few of those injuries. And I remember it being really difficult, because I would still, at Harrod, I would still go to class and I would just sit and have to watch or take notes. Yeah, and I remember I found that pretty upsetting. But I think at that point, I knew that I was going to recover and come back, so I just tried to stay positive in any way that I could.
How was COVID for you?
COVID was pretty difficult. I had just joined the company, I think that was actually my first year in the Corps de Ballet was when COVID happened, so I had only been in the Corps for a few months at that point. So I know that they offered Zoom classes to us. I went home to Virginia and I lived with my parents. I was really lucky because we had a great space in our basement that I kind of made into a studio, and I would take our ABT Zoom class almost every day. I do remember getting quite frustrated after a few weeks, months of doing that, and also just not knowing if we were going to come back or not. So that part of COVID, I would say from March until maybe October, I found quite difficult. But then in the fall time, ABT started doing these bubble projects where they would take a smaller group of dancers and we would go somewhere outside of the city that was, somewhere where we could all live together and take class together, so it was safe. We were testing, doing all that. And we filmed different video projects. We did outdoor performances. And I actually found that time was so amazing, and honestly one of my favorite times of being in the company. I think because I was still relatively new, I really found that as an opportunity to get close with dancers that I didn't know very well yet, because we were in such a small group and we were together for 6 weeks, just working on one ballet. And so I got close with a lot of people doing those projects, and that kind of helped when we came back. I felt like I had really gotten to know people in the company on a deeper level. And yeah, so it was challenging, but there were definitely positive parts to it.
How do you recover after a show or a long day of rehearsals?
I probably could be better about this. It's hard for me after a show to feel the motivation to come home and do a whole post-show recovery, especially when I know I have to get up early the next morning and have a full day. But I've really been trying to stretch more regularly, and even if I can't stretch at night, I feel like I'm not gonna have time or I don't want to do it at night, just building that throughout the day has really helped. I've also, as I've gotten a bit older, noticed how much of a difference really warming up before a show makes. Because when I was younger, as I said earlier, we would have, the rehearsal day and then a break and then do the show. And I would take my break and I would, have my lunch, do my makeup, get ready. And I was like, well, I'm still kind of warm from the rehearsal day, so I didn't really feel like I had to do too much. And then I would do the show. But as I've gotten older, I found that doing a really good warm-up before the show helps so much with recovery for me for the next day. I feel so much better doing a show super warm. So I always try to do a really good warm-up before the show. And then after the show, we have these recovery boots that are compression. I might do those or try to work that in sometime during the day. I really enjoy rolling out too. I feel like that makes a big difference. So when I get home, trying to roll out my feet, that's another big one that I really try to do because my feet often get really tight.
How do you deal with comparing yourself or doubting yourself?
It's something that I still work on all the time. Just being in a company, being around so many amazing dancers, I feel like it's a very natural thing to compare yourself. But if those thoughts come up, I really just try to rework them in my mind, or tell myself that that's not something that I need to be spending my energy doing. There's many other way more productive ways to be spending your energy. And I also believe that everyone really does have their own value, and so it's really not necessary to compare yourself to others. And there's almost no way you can compare yourself to others, because no two people are the same. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. So yeah, I really try to not compare myself, and I think it does get easier the older you get. When you're a student, and I feel joining studio company, trying to become an apprentice, trying to get into the corps de ballet, I felt like I was comparing myself a lot more. And I think, yeah, just getting a little bit older and just knowing the value that I bring has really helped me to not compare myself to others as much. As far as doubting myself, I certainly have been given roles where I'm the first thought is oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this or do it as well as I feel like it should be done. And that's a really difficult feeling. But I think, again, just telling yourself, believing that you can do something is so powerful. And yeah, I really try to just have a very positive inner voice. Even when I'm performing, if I'm nervous to do a step, or if I don't know, if I'm getting to a part in a variation that I'm nervous to do, or I'm scared it's not going to go well, even as I'm dancing it, I'm telling myself positive affirmations as I'm dancing, you can do it, you're strong, anything like that. And sometimes I kind of, even when I'm working on a part leading up to the show, I think of things that I can say to myself as I'm dancing, whether that be corrections or really pushing into your supporting things like that, but also the positive affirmations to stop that doubt from creeping in, even as you're performing on stage.
What has been your biggest struggle in ballet?
I think my biggest struggle would probably be the strength of my feet and ankles, because I have pretty bendy feet, which, has obviously helped me because I think it's a nice line that people like. But with that, I definitely feel like I have a weakness that maybe others don't have as much of. So that has always been something that I feel like I've had to work extra hard on to keep my strength of my feet and ankles. So I try to do on YouTube different point classes just to keep that strength, even just for 5 or 10 minutes. I use them sometimes as a warm up if I'm doing a rehearsal and I haven't danced in an hour or two. I do like a point bar to get my feet going again and to build that strength. And I think that's helped me. And I have noticed a difference of when I like work that in.
What's the best piece of advice a teacher or mentor has given you?
I think the best piece of advice that a mentor has given me is just to stay true to your morals and believe like the path that you're on. Everyone's path is so different. And I think also that can make the doubt and the comparison really seep in, because, you know, we all have like very similar goals in this profession, but staying true to who you are, I think, is so important. Like for me, I know that I'm the happiest when I feel like I'm really dedicating myself to what I'm doing. I'm present in my work every day. I'm being kind to those around me, and I'm supporting and uplifting people around me. That just makes me feel the best about myself when I'm doing those things and when I'm taking care of my body also. So just throughout like being a student and in my career, I feel like staying true to those values for myself has really helped me so much, and it's allowed me to kind of trust the path that I'm on.
Which point shoes do you wear, and have you worn them the same shoes all the way through, or have you changed them up a lot?
So right now I'm wearing blocks. They're a custom synthesis is the model, and I get them 3/4 shanked. And I think there's some also like different things that I have done. Maybe they're like cut down a little bit on the side. And they have this like stretchy satin, which I really love because I feel like it like molds to my foot very nicely. But it's taken me a while to find like this shoe, which I'm very happy with now. I know when I first wore blocks, I was kind of in this like similar style, the synthesis. I think I've always worn the synthesis style when I've been wearing blocks. But actually, maybe a year or two ago, I switched a half a size longer just because I think throughout my training I just was always wearing shoes that were too small on my feet, like consistently throughout my training, and I felt like it limited me from like really like using the floor, and I always felt like I was like gripping, and it kind of occurred to me that, oh, maybe I'm like in shoes that really don't fit my feet and are preventing me from using the floor properly. So ultimately that's why I decided to like try half a size up. Before block, I was in many different kinds of shoes. I know when I started on point, I was in Freeds, and then I was wearing So Dances for a while, and then I think I went back to Freeds. So I've tried quite a few different things, but I'm really happy with where I've landed now with these block shoes.
What advice would you give your 13-year-old self?
I think I would just tell her that she's doing a great job and just to keep going and not to give up, and just to keep believing in herself. I feel like at that age I was so determined and I really knew what I wanted to be, to be a professional, to dance at ABT. And there were definitely, moments in that time and also moments that would come where I would be doubting myself. And so, yeah, I would just tell her that to keep believing in herself and to keep doing what she's doing every day, working hard and, being determined to reach those goals, even when the difficult moments happen along the way.
Final question, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Ooh, that's a great question. I really don't know. Hopefully I'm still dancing. It's kind of a scary career in that you don't really know ever what's going to happen just because you're using your body so much, but I hope I'm still dancing. It's funny because I feel like when 10 years ago when I was 15 or 16, I had such a clear plan in my mind of what I wanted and how I was going to accomplish it, moving to New York, getting into ABT. But now that I'm at this age, I'm really trying to not put that box around myself that I did when I was a student and becoming a professional, even though I'm so glad I did at that time. And I think it worked out for me. And I'm so happy that that's how I was then. I feel like now I'm just so much more open to different possibilities. And yeah, I just want to try to be present in my career every day and just see where that takes me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much for joining me. It's been so great to talk to you.
You too. Thanks so much for having me.